Alright guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about testosterone. So we're talking about the exogenous hormone, the benefits, what it actually is, how it possibly might benefit your life, how it benefited my life, dosing guides or recommendations, and yeah, so let's just get right into it. So testosterone is simply a hormone in the body of men and women, so humans in general, and it's mainly the male hormone. So this is literally what will drive men to do what men do, you know, being more ambitious, getting shit done, being grounded, being masculine, having energy, being resilient. This is the hormone that will fucking make you successful. So it's a primary androgenic anabolic steroid hormone. Okay, so our bodies naturally produce this in a pulsatile fashion. So it's actually created in your sleep. It'll peak in the morning, it'll dip around midnight, and it'll rise back up as you sleep and recover. So it has androgenic effects. So when you take this, or when you're going through puberty and you have high levels of testosterone, that's when you get the masculizing features. So you get stronger brow ridge, thicker jaw bones, a deeper voice, thicker bones in general, and also body hair, so beards and stuff like that. But it's also anabolic, and what that means, it's tissue building. It promotes protein synthesis, and it's antagonistic to cortisol. And cortisol, as we know, directly affects muscle breakdown. And so when you have high levels of testosterone, that anabolic signaling kind of cancels out any sort of cortisol signaling you might have. And that's how you're able to not only grow more muscle from protein synthesis, but reduce the breakdown of it. So the net sum is way greater than being natural. Now let's look at the side effects. So there are obviously cons and there are pros. So let's start off with the pros. Okay, so obviously you're going to have more muscle and less fat. So your metabolism is going to increase. You end up burning more fat. So you might eat the same amount of food, but as soon as you introduce those exogenous hormones, all of a sudden now you're leaning out more than you expected. The gain in muscle mass, that's obviously a given. Obviously your training has to be dialed in to actually give the stimulus for the growth. But yeah. So by taking high levels of testosterone, there's plenty of anecdotal reports of people getting more masculine faces, masculine voices, and so it's going to increase your masculine dimorphism, which will make you more polarizing to the opposite sex and thus more attractive. So it's great for lifestyle in that sense as well, basically making you more fuckable. It's going to increase your risk tolerance. There are some influences on your brain's ability to assess risk, and it essentially lowers that. And so if you are scared to do something when you take, sorry, excuse me. When you take testosterone, you know, things that you were scared of before, you might not be scared of it anymore. And you're willing to take the risk and just go for it, regardless of people's judgments, whether it's, I don't know, approaching a girl, making content, doing something out of your comfort zone. You're going to be more biasing towards this. And that's because testosterone or androgens put your mind in a different state, in more of a sympathetic, I guess you could say dopamine-driven state, where, you know, your response to, you're basically pushed to do more things. That's the best way I can explain it, okay? So testosterone is the molecule that makes you get shit done. It literally is like the fucking survival hormone, I guess you could say. So it's going to bias you to try and make more money, to get more women, to essentially increase your status and be more competitive, okay? And so that's obviously going to come with more drive and more confidence. As you get more jacked and more lean, obviously that's going to also influence your confidence. You're going to have stronger emotional regulation. So testosterone, its conversion to DHT, those hormones regulate your emotions and your ability to be grounded. And yeah, I'll talk about my experience of that later. Now let's talk about the cons. So we've all heard about the cons and all the shit that can happen when you take testosterone or steroids in general. So obviously you can get gyno. If you're prone to male pattern baldness, you might lose your hair. If you take a lot, you can age yourself, get really bad skin quality, and look like a really old man. Another thing it can do, it can increase your hematocrit. So it can increase your red blood cell count, which will increase your blood thickness. And thick blood is not necessarily ideal because it strains your heart, because your heart has to pump all this thick blood around your body. Another thing is that steroids, specifically orals, can skew your lipid profile. So you tend to see a lower HDL level and an increase in LDL, which is the bad cholesterol. Another thing is if you're prone to acne, testosterone is obviously going to make your skin produce more oil, and so you can be more prone to acne there. And then also it can make you infertile. Some people get unlucky and get suppressed more than others, but typically infertility is temporary, and we'll talk about that. So my personal experience on testosterone, so I started using testosterone about last year-ish, and the reason why I started was because I kind of knew that for me to achieve my physique goals, there's no way I was going to do it naturally, and I was kind of at a very low point in my life where I just had to do something, and it felt like testosterone was my only option, and as of now, it's been the best decision ever. Obviously, in long term experience, I can't say for sure, but based off my research and my understanding, I'm pretty sure there's no real downfall. Like obviously now I'm dependent on TRT and these sort of drugs, but that's kind of like a sacrifice that I'm willing to make, given that this could potentially be my gateway to success. I mean, clearly physique-wise, it's already led to that success, but in terms of just overall lifestyle factors as well, I truly believe that it's going to help me and it can help a lot of other people. So my personal experience, so I noticed that fat loss became extremely easy. I was getting leaner by the week, and I wasn't really changing much with my diet or like my energy expenditure, so that was nice. I was having more high energy, more drive, and more confidence. Now, the energy side of things was sometimes a bit too much. Sometimes it was hard to sleep at night, but you get used to that, and it's kind of a skill issue. So I'm also running a full-time, or I'm trying to run a full-time coaching business, and so I'm doing a lot of work when it comes to content creation, DMs, setting calls, and all that shit, right? And so a lot of that stuff's kind of new to me, and I'm kind of stressed, and so it can kind of amplify just being like dialed in and switched on to a point where it's hard to sleep. So I'm still sort of dealing with that right now. But if you're a generally relaxed person, then you probably won't have issues with this. So obviously I got more jacked. That's a given. Another thing that I didn't expect was that became more grounded. I started feeling like I don't really give a fuck about other people's opinions, and kind of just prioritizing myself more, like in a weird way. It's kind of interesting how hormones kind of dictate this sort of behavior. But yeah, like I just started prioritizing myself more. I just was less fazed by other people and what they think, and it's like I'm here just to do what I want to do in life, and nobody can tell me otherwise, sort of thing. And whether that's because of the effects of like testosterone lowering your risk tolerance or what, but back when I was natural, I remember I would have bouts of anxiety and kind of like depression, and those were times when like my testosterone was probably low, so maybe I had like a few nights of bad sleep. And so I guess having an exogenous source that's really stable kind of allows you to be emotionally stable as well. And I do pin daily as well, so that obviously helps, and we'll talk about that later. And so yeah, so far like virtually zero negative side effects. So people kind of like fearmonger things like steroids, and I'm not promoting this anyway. You can do what you want, right? You can make an educated decision. This is just a purely educational video where I'm talking about my experience and what it actually does and its mechanisms. Okay, so like so far I've had only good side effects. Okay, and I guess you could say it's recent, and maybe in the long term I'll be like having more issues. But I don't really see it going that way, because if you stay at a lifestyle dose, you're kind of chilling. It's once you start abusing any sort of drug is when you might have issues. So that's something to think about. Now, yeah, so my main thesis is that, and kind of justification to why this is kind of almost necessary for men, or like at least high performing men that want to succeed in life, is essentially because modern society gives an unideal environment for male testosterone. So as we can see in the literature, testosterone levels back in the 90s versus now is significantly less. So like each decade it's kind of dropping. And whether that's because of the microplastics, the pollution, the food, Jewish propaganda, there's a lot of factors in it, but all we know is that male testosterone is dropping, and it is an issue because, when you have less testosterone, you're more likely to be a sheep, and sort of like if bad people, do things that are bad, and you can't stand up for what's right, and you're a coward because you have low testosterone, that's obviously not ideal for society. And so you having low test is not only bad for you, but it's bad for the people around you and the people that you care about, in my opinion. AI, so artificial intelligence, is coming in quick, and we're kind of heading into a massive revolution where a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, and there's going to be a big uprising that's coming within the next 5 to 8 years, right? And so my thesis is that, you want to have every competitive advantage you can get when it comes to making money and just having a high work capacity. And I believe that testosterone is definitely going to aid in this. I mean, you can look at the highest performing entrepreneurs, Alex Hormozy, Alex Becker, Jeff Bezos, like all these guys are, utilizing these exogenous androgens because they really do help. You can work off 5 hours of sleep, and you can work for long hours. And so, it really does help. So, yeah, the idea is to increase your work output to be as successful as you can. Okay. So, essentially, testosterone can be, in my belief, the ultimate lifestyle maxer. It will improve your life if you're healthy already and you know what you're doing. And as a result of being more jacked, more lean, your life quality is going to improve. You're going to become more attractive. You're going to become more fuckable. You're going to become more confident. So your network's going to expand. And yeah, I believe that it's going to improve your life quality. It certainly has improved mine. And yeah, I think it's going to bias you towards more successful action, successful outcomes, because it's going to bias you to take more action in certain fields. So yeah, ideally, this is essentially great for high performers. So people that don't want to settle for average and want to be the best version of themselves, this is definitely something to look into. So now how do you actually integrate this into your life? Okay, so first we need to make sure we know how to deal with the side effects. That's number one, right? So the biggest concern when people use PEDs is like, oh, I don't want to get the side effects, which is totally understandable. But the beautiful thing is that you can actually mitigate pretty much 90 to 100% of all the side effects, which then begs the question, okay, if there's actually no side effects because you can mitigate the risks, then you pretty much only get the benefit. And so it becomes a no-brainer to why this, exogenous androgens are so effective and so beneficial for men. So again, the danger is in the dosing. If you abuse any drug, it could be Panadol, it could be anything, of course you're going to get side effects. So dosing has to be dialed in. And yes, let's talk about the mitigating of side effects. So gyno is just caused by high estrogen. So you want to either lose fat or you can use an aromatase inhibitor, which I don't recommend, but it's essentially just controlling E2. Okay, hair loss, if you're already prone to this, you can delay it with 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, so things like finasteride and dutasteride. Also things like RU58841, which is a local DHT blocker that you can put on your scalp. Things like oral minoxidil to help keep your hair healthy. Microneedling, there's a bunch of stuff that you can do with hair loss. Obviously, the degree that you experience hair loss is dependent on your genetics. So some people just are balding by the age of 20. Then obviously you kind of just have to accept your fate. But most people that just have like a natural timeline of hair loss where, maybe they were supposed to be bald by 50, you can delay these things for a long, long time before you really even care that you're bald. So acne, that's also genetic dependent, but you can use things like Accutane. You can have a proper diet, whole foods, and things that your gut agrees with. When it comes to improving your lipid profile, you want to take omega-3s. You want to do regular zone 2 cardio, and again, diet, not eating a lot of saturated fats or processed foods. Controlling your hematocrit, so your blood thickness, that just comes down to hydration. Make sure you get your electrolytes in, magnesium, potassium, sodium, all that sort of stuff. And hydration is a big one for that one. And then also, so infertility. When it comes to infertility, it's like you have to try and reduce the risk of being like permanently suppressed or making it harder to have a kid when it's time to have that. And pretty much the best way to do this, at least from the anecdotal experience of many other bodybuilders, is to run periodic bouts of HCG. So maybe during a cruise during the year, say 3-month cruise, 12 weeks, you'll just partner your TRT dose with say 300 to 500 IU 3 times a week of HCG. Obviously, the dosing is kind of arbitrary. The idea is you're just kind of stimulating the balls to, work, so they're not completely dormant for years at a time. And the theory is that when you're able to stimulate it and it's active, and compared to being completely dormant, you're actually allowing it to, I guess, sustain itself. So say 8 years down the line when you're blasting and cruising for that long, when it's time to have kids, your balls weren't dormant for 8 years. You was on and off for like 3 months at a time during the year, and so it'll be easier to have kids, right? Theoretically, and everyone's different, right? But this is the best thing you can do for that side effect. And as far as aging goes, that just comes down to making sure you sleep. And again, you're using responsible dosing. You're not abusing 20 IUs of HGH or a gram of test. But yeah, that comes with the overall health and just being very conscious of like how much you're sleeping. Are you getting all your micronutrients in? Lowering oxidative stress, or taking supplements like NAC or taking injectable glutathione. Stuff like that is always going to help with aging. So let's talk about the dosing guide before we wrap this video up. So there's three main sort of like buckets when it comes to testosterone dosing. The first is TRT dosing. So this is like genuine therapeutic dosing, and this can range from like 75 milligrams to 150 milligrams, and that just depends on how your body metabolizes it. So if you're a fast metabolizer, you might need more. If you're a slow metabolizer, you might need less. It just depends on how you feel and also what your blood work says your total test and free test is at. Okay, so aiming sort of a range between, ideally I would say 1,000 to 1,500. And then for lifestyle dosing, you want to be between 250 to 300. So this is when you're going to get most of the benefits when it comes to your confidence, your drive, your cognition, your work output, but then also the muscle building and fat loss effects. You're going to have that lifestyle physique, right? You're not going to look like a crazy bodybuilder, but you're going to look pretty damn good compared to most people. And then if your goal is bodybuilding, then it's going to be about 300 milligrams plus. Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer. So if you're trying to build as much muscle as possible, you would run your cycles as 300, 400, 500, blasting and cruising. And then I probably wouldn't go over 500 when it comes to testosterone. That's when you would start looking into adding a secondary anabolic. But that's a topic for another video. What you need to know is that the amount of testosterone you take is related to the androgen load that you take. And obviously, the high androgen load, the more anabolic effects you're going to get, but also the more risk you might have of bad side effects. Last but not least, always pin daily and intramuscular. Don't do sub-Q for oil-based injections, and start lean at a lean body composition to avoid E2 issues. And that's pretty much it. This is like the full guide. It's really not that complicated. It's pretty simple when it comes to the administration and the utility of testosterone. So yeah, man, if you guys found this video valuable or helpful, please leave a like on the video. Leave in a comment if you have any questions or thoughts about this, if you agree or disagree. And yeah, subscribe for more.